All right, we'll call this meeting of the Policy Committee of the Whole to order this March 8, 2022. Ask Ms. Jenkins to please call the roll.
Ms. Dominguez?
Present.
Ms. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Bush?
Here.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Mr. Westmoreland?
Present.
Ms. Abrams?
Here.
Mr. Toller?
Here.
Ms. Richards?
Present.
All right. The primary focus of tonight's meeting is to try to move our process along in regards to the redistricting that we've been working on for the last couple of months, just to kind of remind everybody of the journey that we've been on. I don't remember the exact month, but a few months ago, the board hired our demographer to assist us with this process. Mr. Blair is here tonight to provide input as needed. I think most of us have been working with Mr. Garrett, who wasn't able to make it tonight. But a few months ago, we did bring them on to assist us. We've had multiple individual meetings with their office to work on the process. We've also had a number of public meetings to walk us through the process and to gather public input. In addition to meetings with the board and the demographer, we've also made the demographer available to representatives of the NAACP. And then I think at our last meeting, we put into the record various correspondences and that have been exchanged between the board and the NAACP. Tonight, what I'd like to accomplish is for the board to adopt some rules on how we're going to proceed going forward. We'll also review and consider one of the possible plans that could be adopted. This is the one that the demographer has put together after meeting with the board individually and looking at the data. This one has been shared on our website for the last couple of weeks, as well as circulated amongst the board via email a few weeks ago. We will look at that. We'll consider whether we want to move at least this plan to the next step. However, if any members have other plans that they would like the board to consider, we will have an opportunity for those to be offered at the full board meeting, which I believe we had previously announced was going to be next Tuesday.
Correct.
So our goal is still to adopt a final plan at our meeting next Tuesday. This is the one that we'll talk about tonight is one option, but again, there will be an opportunity for various board members to present other options at that board meeting. So the first item on our agenda is to consider proposed rules for the adoption of the new redistricting plan. The idea here is to try to gather some agreement amongst us as to what kind of the minimum rules will be for any proposed plans. I do have a couple of rules that I would like the board to consider, and then of course we can open up the floor for any other rules. But I only have two very basic rules that I would like the board to consider adopting. The first rule would be that any member's proposal must include a map and demographic data compiled by the board demographer and circulated to the board at least 2 days prior to any scheduled vote. So if there's a member that would be willing to move for the adoption of that rule, then we can discuss it.
I make a motion to accept that rule.
All right, so the motion is made by Ms. Dominguez to adopt that rule. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is made by Mr. Westmoreland. Does any member have any concerns or questions about that proposed rule?
Okay, so you're basically proposing that we bring our own map to the table. And this is working through Danny Garrett.
Yes.
To do that, because I just want to make that clear, because I mean, none of us can afford it.
Right. Yeah, what I'm saying is that if a board member has the plan that they would like for us to vote on, that for us to be able to vote on that plan, at a minimum, we ought to have maps that we can look at and consider, the data, kind of like that worksheet that was attached to the one, so that we know whether what the demographics of your proposed plan is, and that our demographer that we as a board have hired for this purpose needs to have at least had an opportunity to review what the data says, and verify that that is accurate data. And then finally, that all of us have at least 2 days prior to the board meeting to look at what you'd like for us to vote on.
So that would be like Sunday evening by 6 p.m. that
Correct.
We have that? Okay.
What did he say? I couldn't hear it.
So Sunday evening, we ought to.
Sunday at 6,
Sunday at 6, we would,
How would we distribute that to each member?
email.
just by email. Yeah.
So, just asking, if I had changes to this, couldn't I just call the demographer that's working for us and say, hey, can you swap this precinct for that precinct between me and somebody, and then let him do the work on the numbers, let him do work on the maps, and send it back to us?
That's
You're not saying that I have to do the work of the demographer, correct?
correct. I'm saying that it needs to go through the demographer so that we are all can be
So what
assured
the
that the.
motion would keep from happening would be for me to walk in here at the meeting and just say, I don't like it, I want her precinct, she can have my precinct, or I'm not voting for it.
Well, I mean, you can still not vote for it, but the idea is that if you want to make a motion to amend a plan or submit your own proposal, we need to have the data to be able to do that. And yes, this would set us a deadline to say, look, if you want to look at shifting this to this, please do it and send it to us to all look at before Sunday.
Right.
That's what I'm asking.
Or
yeah.
by Sunday.
Or by Sunday. And the process would be exactly what you said. You call Danny or Mr. Blair, say, I want you to do a toller plan, but I want it to essentially be what you already put together, just switch this precinct for this precinct and send it out to everybody.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the vote on this item would be just to be able to make a proposal for a new situation, not against the whole plan.
This particular thing is not talking about a specific plan at all. It's saying that
Set the rules.
It's to say that
Yeah.
if we're going to look at something other than this plan that's been circulated already, we're agreeing that this is one of the rules that we want to adopt as a board to look at other plans.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on the Mr. Moore?
I'm not sure that the timeline that we have to work within. I mean, it's, the timeline that we were trying to work in is not the deadline.
But this
But
rule,
I'm not sure that, now the timeline is something that we can use to work with to gain progress. Get closer to what I think should be a non-member meeting to discuss a final plan.
and that's a fair point. This rule, if adopted, does not say definitively that we have to do our final vote next Tuesday. That could be another motion either tonight or on Tuesday. This is just saying that if you are going to present a different proposal, that we agree that this is the process that's going to be used before we vote on any other proposals. That's all this rule said, is saying.
Restate it again.
The restate the proposed rule. So it should be on your screen in front of you. It's just saying that any member's proposal must include a map and demographic data compiled by the board demographer and circulated to the board at least 2 days prior to any scheduled vote. So if,
Mr. Duncan, are we scheduled to vote 1 week from tonight? So it's already scheduled, it's going to be on the agenda?
it's my understanding that the board president intends to have this on our agenda for consideration at the, 1 week from tonight, yes.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that the board could vote
Right.
to table that, or the
Gotcha.
board president may consider something else down the road. All this rule would say is that if you intend to submit an alternative proposal, it's got to go through our demographer, and you have to provide it to the rest of the board 2 days prior to when we're going to vote on it. That's all this rule would do. Does that make sense? All right. Before we vote on it, I know Mr. Showers has indicated a desire to provide us with some public input regarding the issue of redistricting. Do you want to speak to this proposed rule, or do you want to speak to something?
I'll speak to
The map, all right. I'll make sure we give you an opportunity to do that before we vote on the map. Okay. But I wanted to check on that first. Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on the proposed rule? All right. If not, we'll call the question and ask you to vote your machines on this proposed rule.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes with Mr. Moore voting no.
The only other proposed rule that I was going to suggest for the board is that we adopt a rule that says that any member's proposal must include no more than 3 split precincts per district, and that no precinct may be split between more than 2 districts, which is the state law. And Ms. Jenkins, I apologize, there's one minor edit to what I had sent to you earlier, because
We're going to ask you to repeat it too.
If it's state law, why would we make it a rule?
well, I'll explain that in just a minute. But Ms. Jenkins, did you want me to reread it? Or
Well, I have, any member's proposal must include no more than 3 split precincts per district, and no district can be split more
no
than,
precinct can be split more than into more than 2 districts.
So precinct can't be split into
Okay.
3 different.
3 different school board members' districts.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So a school board district can only have 3 split precincts, and no precinct can be split between more than 2 school board members' districts, is the rule. Okay? So, to answer your question, Mr. Toller, the reason that I think we need to have some agreement amongst the board is that violating that rule is one of the things that the NAACP has specifically asked us to do in both their letters and in some of the meetings that we've had with them. And so I think we, as a board, need to decide, are we willing to consider, and remember, I think our last meeting, we had even talked about whether, we were going to get an attorney general's opinion to tell us that we had to follow state law or not, and that was the crux of that issue. So what I'm suggesting is that to move this conversation forward, we vote as a board tonight as to whether we are going to follow that state law and only consider proposed maps that follow that state law, or do we want to open ourselves up to considering other maps that would in fact violate that rule?
So you want us to vote on that, even though it's not on the,
Well, that's one of
Can
the
you put it on
rules
the
that I'm
screen, Sam?
suggesting that we we
I don't
consider
have a
tonight.
motion and a
Tonight?
second yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
we need a motion then.
so yeah, if a board member would like for us to consider that rule, I will receive a motion to that effect at this time.
I'll make a motion to accept the rule, if she will restate the rule, or you will restate the rule, so
Yes.
everybody understands what the motion is.
So,
You want me to restate it, Mr. Duncan?
yes, please restate Mr. Minguez's motion.
Any member's proposal must include no more than 3 split precincts per district, and no precinct can be split into more than 2 districts.
So is that your motion, Mr. Minguez?
Into 2 districts, is that what you
Yes.
said? Yes. Per state, could I add per,
In accordance with
in
state law.
accordance to state law?
Yes.
I would like to add.
All right. So Mr. Minguez has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Westmoreland. Is there any additional discussion on the motion?
Yeah,
Mr. Bush?
so this is already law, but with this motion right now, correct?
Correct.
I just see no reason in doing this. I mean, it's like, I don't understand the reasoning. If it's law already, why would we have to make a motion to say we're not gonna break state law? I mean, it's like obvious our demographer is not gonna let us do that when he explains this plan to us, that this is a reason why we can't do it this way, because there'll be more than 3 split precincts. No precinct can be split in more than 2 districts. So that's just my personal opinion. I don't know.
So
I don't think this is protecting us at all, because we're not going to do it anyway, right?
so what it will do for us, I think, Mr. Bush, is again, help us to guide the future meetings where we are adopting these maps. It also might be instructive to some of these other board members as they're considering whether they want to propose maps that they're being pressured to propose, if they know that it's the intention of this board to follow state law because we have voted to that effect. I think that's part of it, but then it would also, finally, it would give, I think, that the chairman of whatever meeting where we're considering these proposals, it would give that chairman the ability to say that map is out of order and is not going to be considered by the board. If we don't adopt this rule, then, and a board member wants to present these maps, then we have to go through the entire process of considering the maps with the demographer. If it has to create the map for us to consider, which is extra work for them, even though it violates state law. This kind of short circuits that process.
Well, it's also a reminder to us of the state law.
Correct.
Because, I mean, it's not like we've memorized every line in that big packet.
That's why we hired Danny.
This is a,
And Brett just said everything that we submit, like Tom said, is going through him anyway.
Right, but if a board member goes to Mr. Garrett or Mr. Blair and says, I don't care that that's the state law, I want you to create this map, then they have to create that map.
But then he'll report to us that it's illegal and it doesn't work, right?
Right, and but they've had to create the map, they've had to create the resolution that goes along with that map, they've done all of that work, and then it comes to the board, and we have to, and then they're gonna say, now, I've created this map, but it's a violation of state law, so I don't think you should adopt it. Go ahead, Mr. Blair.
Hi, I'm William Blair. I'm one of your demographers along with Dan Garrett. I've seen some of you 10 years ago. If somebody gives us any plan and says, will you draw this, we will draw it for you, and it remains confidential between you and I until such time as you give me the authority to provide it to you. So there could be 20 plans that are sitting out there, perhaps in violation of state law, perhaps not. So I think that's probably the intention of your rule, is to consolidate plans into what is currently available under state statute.
Correct. And again, it wouldn't be an issue except that we have been specifically asked to consider maps that would in fact violate state law. And we as a board have not had a vote that says that we are not going to consider maps that violate state law. So this vote it just narrows it down to saying that we're only going to consider maps that don't violate state law. Miss, who else had a comment?
You good? Okay.
Okay, yeah, let me just say that, as everybody knows, because everybody received copies of the letter from the Legal Defense Fund, and they are in contestment with some of the, I guess, the interpretation of exactly what this law demands, you know, and as I represent the constituents of my district and the constituents of the majority of the constituents in my district, because they're both majority, you know, we have a majority of African American and a minority of white constituents in my district. And, you know, and me also being a member of the NAACP, have to give respect and have to lend an ear to the advice that is coming from there. I don't know that contention has been satisfied. You know, I will have to check. But as it is right now, my understanding and my concern that maybe there might be something missing. You know, I will not vote for this bill. I mean, I don't hold it against anybody here who votes for it, but I will not be voting for it because I have to leave that door open for that.
I understand.
For the LDF to look out for what is best for the constituents in my district.
So Jerry, you're saying that's not the interpretation?
No, they have contended. They've contended the interpretation that you know, Brett just stated, that the law does not state that there can only be 3 splits. Personally, you know, just after looking at some of the data from the Census Bureau, I don't think that there would be a need for more than 3 splits. But that does not justify, in my mind, going along with this rule. I mean, you guys will pass it, and I'll abide by it, but I will not vote for it because it is contested.
So my understanding, and Mr. Showers again is here to speak to it, but my understanding of what the it's LDF, right?
Right,
Yeah, the
Legal Defense Fund.
What they contend is that there is federal law, specifically the Voting Rights Act, that requires us to do a certain set of things, and then there is state law, and their argument is that if we have to violate state law in order to comply with federal law, then it's their expectation that we should do that. That we should, if we have to do more than 3 split precincts in order to comply with federal law, then they think that that's what we should have to do. I don't think that they contend that the state law doesn't say what it says, because it's pretty clear. You know, it says what it says. They just think that if we have to violate state law in order to comply with the Voting Rights Act, then that's what we should do. But Mr. Showers, did you want to clarify that? And look, I'm not going to make it to where you can only speak. If you need to talk about this and then the next thing, that's totally fine.
Certainly, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Chair Duncan and board members and Superintendent Steele. With regards to what the legal defense has asked, they want this board to be able to abide by federal law and state law when it comes to an equitable map. And so what they presented to the board was that it is possible to draw three majority minority districts. That's what they presented. It's up to the board and your demographer to draw the three majority minority districts. What we do know, since African Americans and other minority are a third of the parish and up to 40% of the parish, that it is possible for three majority seats. And let me just say that it's not about a one-upper or NAACP against the school system or any other organization. It's about equity. That's what it boils down to. I mean, you all have a motto. Not a motto, but you have core values. Be great, be compassionate, be respectful. But if we're going to be great, we have to include equity into that equation. So it is your demographer's job to draw the three majority seats. And I just hope that it's something that we all can agree upon. And I know it's a tedious effort because I sat with the legal defense demographer and we take it, and it was tedious. And it is, the state law does say, you can't split three precincts. So it's a tedious job, but it can be done. It can be done.
Thank you, Mr. Showers. So, all right, so any other questions or comments on the proposal?
So the motion that Rose just gave, so that's part of A, or it's just a new item that's not,
That's part of A.
it's part of A?
That's
Okay.
consideration of the.
It's part of the
proposed
A
rule.
agenda item?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Any other questions or discussion on the proposed rule? All right, if not, we'll call the question and ask members to vote your machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes with Mr. Bush and Mr. Moore voting no.
All right. So, would now open the floor if any other board members have any proposed rules as far as, the redistricting process that you'd like the board to consider. Is there any other proposed rules?
So item B is not to approve this plan in particular.
Well, we're going to get to the B
Okay.
in just a moment.
Okay, so you're not there.
Yeah, we're just, if there's any other rules that y'all would like, that y'all think would be helpful in helping to move this process along, I was just going to open it up to any other board members. No? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to item B.
Brett, I do. I'd like to add a rule that.
Okay,
After considering the first two, that we as a board come together to not to make a decision, but to discuss the differences. Once we've all submitted, our proposals, that we come together to avoid prolonging this by having different members object to certain things. I think we should,
okay.
I think we should have a meeting to gain some kind of a consensus of a map that we can all agree on.
Mr. Duncan, if I may, if we get other maps Sunday night and we think we need more time to discuss those, we certainly can table it off of our agenda and even select a special date if needed to vote on that just as a special one-item agenda anytime during the month of March or beginning of April. So, I don't know if we need a rule that says we're all going to have a meeting, because we may not need a meeting. I think we ought to wait and see what we got, and then we can decide from there whether we want to table it or not.
Jerry, are you talking about an executive session?
And, an executive session would work because that would give us an opportunity
Because I
to,
don't know. Can we even do this in executive session?
We can't.
cannot?
It's gotta be.
No,
Cannot?
we cannot consider redistricting in executive session, as far as I understand it. If we were in litigation over our maps, perhaps you could consider litigation, but we're not.
And question two, can we get together and discuss things? We have to do public.
Well,
Would it be considered a meeting?
if we have more than 4 board members all meeting
Public.
specifically to discuss redistricting, and we haven't done it in accordance with the public meeting law, then that would be a violation.
Gotcha.
But we can, if we follow the open meeting laws.
All right,
We
we
can-
can do it.
We have, I mean, take the floor, Mr. Duncan.
No, go ahead.
We have met individually with the demographers, we've met in small groups, but like Mr. Moore is saying, it may be beneficial if we can find a time to have an open meeting. Maybe not in this environment, maybe in a classroom environment or something where we can still be open to the public. Wouldn't be a vote taken, it would be a discussion with the demographer and with, and other people can come, Michael could be there and anybody else that was concerned about it. And we could actually throw it up on the screen like this and he could say, okay, well, Janice, if you give me this back and I give you this back, what does it do to our numbers and what does it do? Because personally, there's things about this that I don't like, but being, in a district where I'm bordered by Mississippi, Washington Parish, and St. Helena, I don't have a whole lot of options. So, we all have to give and we have to take a little bit, but it may be beneficial to have that roundtable discussion in the form of an open meeting legally to discuss it.
So I don't have any objection to doing something like that, and in fact, it's been my intention in the 3 open committee meetings that we have had on this topic to have those types of discussions, or to at least have an open and transparent process. What I'm concerned about is we're coming up against a hard deadline, and so, which was part of the goal of trying to get at least some rules to the game adopted. So if, Mr. Moore, if you want to put a deadline on, when proposals will be submitted, and then maybe we can put a deadline on doing some sort of workshop, I'm open to those things, but to just continue to kind of hold this out there, waiting for alternative ideas to be created is what I'm concerned about.
We
Yeah,
already
and
have
it's just-
rules on when they gotta be created anyway, though.
Right.
We just already adopted that.
Yeah, it's my discernment that everybody is doing their own thing, right? And so we need to have one person calling the steps in this dance, to put it lightly. And until we get together and and everyone can understand, because we've all been involved enough now to have a much greater understanding about what it's going to take to get the redistricting done. And I think we'll be able to come to a compromise on getting something done if we try to work it in this type of setting where we're not coming together to vote, we're just coming together to build something to vote on.
Okay. So what is, with that discussion, did
So
you want to
what-
restate what you specifically want to propose, or do you?
That we have a final, one final meeting to discuss.
One final committee meeting?
One final committee meeting to discuss everyone's concerns about the redistricting plan and iron out the edges, iron out the exceptions or the objections that everyone has.
I mean, we'd only got Monday to do that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that what item B is gonna be in a minute? Isn't that what's on the agenda for us to
No.
discuss and consider?
Well, item B is to discuss and consider the proposal that has been put together by the demographer. We're
Well, yeah,
about
I
to
said
have
we-
an open
we-
discussion about
Yeah, we
that
haven't even
right now.
discussed it. That's what we're
Yeah.
fixing to do in a minute, I think, and then we could have another one after, before we vote on Tuesday, if we vote on Tuesday.
Okay, now
Yeah,
that's.
we haven't had an opportunity to even talk about it. I think
Right,
that's
and that is
we're
what we're
fixing
about to do
Yeah.
in just a minute, yes.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, if we can agree to do that, then we
Okay.
don't need to make a third.
okay. And
So you withdraw your motion?
Yeah, I'm gonna withdraw it.
Okay.
okay. All right, any other discussion then on proposed rules? All right. If not, then we will now move on to agenda item B, which is to consider approval of a resolution adopting a new redistricting plan. Again, it's only my intention tonight, as far as this agenda item is concerned. Yes, ma'am?
Oh, just,
Okay. Is for us to receive this map and data that Mr. Garrett has put together for us, to have an open discussion on it. Of course, we cannot do a final approval as a committee. All we can do is refer it to the board for final consideration. But you know, it's with the understanding that there will be additional opportunities to submit other proposals before final adoption in accordance with the rules that we've just adopted. So, I guess I can go through this proposal, and then we can open up discussion if you would like. But before I do that, I guess just so that we are proper in our procedure, I would ask for a motion that we refer the proposed map and resolution to the board for final consideration without a specific recommendation. That would at least get it on the table for us.
Okay, I'll make
Tonight.
that motion.
For tonight.
Yeah, so the motion is just that we refer it to the full board for consideration without recommendation.
Okay.
All right, so that motion is made by Mrs. Dominguez. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Mr. Westmoreland. So, just to introduce this, again, this is the map that came out of the various discussions that members have had with the demographer. You'll see the population summary that if this map were approved, it does put us within the various deviation requirements. And those percentages, we have to be within 5% plus or minus of the ideal population, which is 14,795 people per district. So this map does accomplish that objective. It also maintains two majority black districts, the first one being District A that has a 65%, almost 66% majority black population, and District G would remain a majority black district with a 56.21% of its population being black. In addition, it creates District D, which would be 49.63% white and 42.6% black. So that is close to being a 50-50 district. That'll be the extent of my comments on the proposal. I know, Ms. Simmons, you had some comments that you wanted to make about the proposal.
Yeah, my major problem with this proposal is, of course, I know I had the largest number of voters in my district than anybody else, and now, of course, I'm going down, but I've lost three major neighborhoods down at the south end that were my constituents for years. And of course, I'm not happy with that. So of course, I'm not happy with the plan after looking at it and realizing that I'd lost those areas.
Okay. Ms. Abrams?
Yes, I'm not really happy about the map either, but I was just, why did we, when we do things like our school calendar, anything that we propose, we always get to choose from one or two different, why did we have just one? Why are we just looking at one map? Why didn't the demographer give us two maps to consider or three maps to consider? You know, and let us look to see, okay, if we did it this way and we took from this, we would have, this would be your district. B would be, this would be your district, and so on and so forth. Why did we just have just one to consider?
Yeah, and look, I'm open, I hope we do have some additional maps to consider. Again, this is just the first map that's being released publicly after those discussions. I know that with some of us, he did show us various different options. I think with your district, Ms. Abrams, if your options were admittedly pretty limited because Mr. Toller had to come south and it took some precincts. And of course, I think Ms. Bailey Simmons was not willing to go any further south either. I mean, so you're bounded by Mrs. Bailey Simmons on the southern portion of your district and by Mr. Toller on the north end. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some other creative options that we can maybe come up with between now and when we do final adoption. And so, you know, hopefully we can continue to look at that. But yes, we ought to be able to get some other options. Mr. Moore, or
Yeah,
hold on just a minute, Mr. Moore.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Ms.
Go ahead.
Abrams, did you have anything else you wanted to?
No, I just feel like we need to have a few more options. And, okay, there's five, we always say 5 new board members. It's been almost 4 years now, so we're not new board members anymore. But we've never been through this before. You two, Miss Sandra, yourself, y'all have been through this before. Rose has been through this before. So we don't even know where to even start to do this, to get this done. So we're depending on the demographer to help us with this. I've only met with him once. And basically, I was said, okay, this is, you need to go into Mr. Westmoreland's area. Mr. Tom's going to take this much from you, and you're going to get this given to Miss Janice, and that was basically it. I didn't know if that was right or if it was wrong. I would like to meet with all of my board members to get their input on how they feel. If Janice may not want part of my Independence area. You know, she may want, but she, like you said, we don't have much of a choice when it comes to things, but we might be able to tweak a few of the precincts, just a little bit.
All right. And yeah, we can try to set up some additional meetings to talk about that, but before we do a final adoption, I'm open to, I think that's a fair point. Mr. Moore, you had something else you wanted to?
I was just going to say that perhaps that should be the third rule, that we do not post any other proposals before the board has an opportunity to actually look at the proposals, because it creates it creates a problem with the community. They see this posted on the school board, on the parish site, the board site, and they think that this is the final thing. This is what the board is going to be voting on. You know, there was a sense of disparity that there weren't going to be any other considerations, and that the decision had already been made, coming from constituents in my district, and actually some people in some other districts as well.
But the only thing that,
I'm just saying, let's just wait until we actually have an agreement with the board members before we put something up for the parish to look at. As that way, I don't have to answer any more of the questions that I've had to answer.
I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Moore, but at the same time, we do, again, have to comply with the open meetings law, and it would not be lawful for us just to come to a private agreement on what we want it to be, prior to us having an open meeting on it, so the way the procedure was outlined, in the various meetings that we've already had is that, board members would have an opportunity to present their proposals. It is, I think the correct procedure is that before the board votes on any map, it ought to be released to the public for the public to see what we're voting on, even if it's going to be a vote that is not going to be successful. If this map doesn't make it, but we plan to vote on it within a certain number of days, the public needs to see what we're about to vote on, and they ought to see it at least 2 days before we're going to vote on it.
When is the deadline to get this in?
Mr. Blair, can you remind us, I know there's a couple of different deadlines that are hard deadlines for us.
We have to have something in place to the Secretary of State by mid-June, so they can properly implement the plan in time for qualifying for all y'all, July 20th through the 22nd. So there's several months we can kick the can if we need to get everybody.
So the hard deadline is June,
So I think it's June 22nd.
okay.
So we really didn't have to do it next week if we got that much time.
Well, there's the legal deadlines, and then there's also, I think, deadlines that we ought to be considering for the public's benefit. I don't think that it's fair to the general public for us to release our maps 1 month before qualifying.
No, not that late, but that's
But-
July. The qualifying's July.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. People need to be able to see maps
Yeah.
and make decisions about whether they're going to run for this office or not. I think they ought to have more than 1 month. They ought to have the benefit of more than 1 month to have to make that decision.
Yeah, but it's March, so we could still
We have
wait a
some-
month.
we do
Yeah.
have some time.
And I would suggest that.
Yes, sir.
And some of this timeline, I think we probably suggested to y'all, because imagine the inundation the Secretary of State and the rest of our voters are going to get when 64 parishes and municipalities are all submitting their plans on June 22nd to get it properly implemented. Our idea was let's try and get this done early enough that your registrar properly implements your plan, the Secretary of State gets the plan ahead of time, properly implements it, so there's no confusion or controversy or implementation problem with your new plan.
That's right. No, and yeah, Danny's original suggestion to us was sometime in February, so we've already blown past his original.
Mr. Chairman, are we discussing any kind of motion right now?
The motion is just on an open discussion about this map.
I'd like to make an amendment if I can. There's no way we're ready to do this Tuesday night. 'Cause I done heard
I agree.
four board members say that they got issues, so I'll make an amendment to the motion, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, that we pull this from the agenda and bring it back sometime in April.
Second.
Well, let's continue to have some discussion, or at least
Yeah,
let
we
them
can
have some
continue
discussion,
discussion.
but then if you want to make a motion to table, Mr. Moore has asked for us to have an open discussion, which is what we're doing right now, so, but thank you. Did you have something else to add?
No, I was gonna say, we're happy to draw any plan for any member. And I appreciate bringing them through our company, so we're comparing apples and apples with the data, using the same mapping software, so we're confident that we're not violating state law. And we'll take proposals and conversations, and we're happy to draw any one of you, a plan of all your own, that satisfies the way you think the school board should be drawn.
Yep, which has been the open offer since we started the process. But Mr. Toller?
Yeah, and I know I have been through this once before with parish council, and I know this is a dance of trying to get the numbers to match. And you have so many variables with population, and then you have also the variables of race and all the other things, and I get that. The last conversation that I had with Danny about this was even something as simple as, if you see at the top, the precinct 101, that is my only precinct in the Kentwood High School School District. So since I live on the north end, the very north end of my district, I'm actually giving up my only precinct that connects me with Kentwood High School, and then getting 2 precincts that obviously Robin didn't want to give up on the south end, which is further from my home. So it just, in my district, I know it just complicates my district a little bit more. Now, I will vote for this tomorrow if need be, because I know that not everybody's going to get what they want, and there is some compromise and give and take on all these. But at one point, when Danny and I were going through this, there was a solution, and we found the solution. He said, hey, Tom, this works. And then whenever I get the map, it's changed back to the other way. So that's my concern with it is, you know, having the individual groups. I was told one thing, and I love Danny, and I think Danny does a great job at this, but then collectively, I think it's more important that we sit down with the demographer collectively in an open forum and start pushing things around, and him say, hey, Tom, you can't have this because of this, or Janice, you can't, you know. So I'm not objecting to the plan, because, you know, the process is set in place, and there's so many variables. I understand that it's a nightmare, you know, trying to overcomplicate it to try to satisfy, you know, a racial component. Not that I'm against that, Michael. You know, the first plan actually put me out of my own district that y'all proposed. So I know that there's complicated things there, and there's reasons for that, but I sure do hope that the 21% minority in my district feel well represented by me, regardless of what color I am, because when someone calls, I don't care what color they are. I could care less who they are. If they call, I'm going to help them. And I hope that that's the way that people in my district feel.
Okay. Any other discussion on the, I'm gonna
Yeah.
bring Mr. Showers up in just a minute. But
So as far as the south end, as we all know, the south end has exploded with the census. And I've gotten so many more people now than I ever had before, but I'm losing a lot of my neighborhood because of the fact that they're going up. Mine's going to Sandra's. Sandra's is going up to Tom. Same on the other side. You know, I'm picking up across I-55. I never, in this district, has never crossed I-55. But yet I'm losing my side of the world, so to speak, and I'm going all the way from parish line to parish line on the south end because of the numbers, and because numbers are having to go up. So none of us are getting a perfect map. I have pockets of minority, and of course this south district is by no fault of anybody's. That's where people live. It's a majority white district, and there are pockets of minorities that I'm trying to keep in my district. But it's very difficult. I know that Ms. Jenkins called us, and we scheduled with Mr. Garrett, you know, because he came over here twice and offered at least twice. I sat down with him for a couple of hours with Ms. Simmons and Mr. Bush, and then again with me and Mr. Duncan, and we traded numbers, we traded precincts. You know, you can't have it, so many split precincts. I mean, for hours. I did. So I'm not sure how, like Miss Robin, you only got one meeting. I'm not sure what happened with that, but it's no perfect plan. I don't like losing part of Champ Cooper School District voters, but I'm also picking up the other side of I-55 all the way to Rosaryville. So I don't know that there is a perfect plan. I think we all just need to accept that we're going to lose some of our best areas and pick up some new areas, and we're going to represent those people just as well as we could do our neighborhood people, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know that the three districts, 2 are predominant minority, and then the one that Mr. Glenn represents right now is almost completely split, 49 to 42 or 43%. So that's pretty close. I mean, I think Danny pulled in a lot of pockets to try to make almost 3 full. And I asked him about that. We traded around, and I think Mr. Bush's district has lost a lot of seats over there. But I mean, I've lost pretty much half of downtown Ponchatoula now. I always had downtown Ponchatoula. I don't have it anymore. Because we were trying to pull those neighborhoods into Mr. Glenn's precincts so that he could have almost a full minority district in that precinct's opportunity as well. So I'm not sure that we'll ever come to a perfect match. I just hope everybody can make a consensus that we have to shift the precincts no matter if we truly like it or not. It's just what it is.
All right. Any other board members have comments? Mr. Showers, did you want to?
Let me just say, looking at this map, and that was posted on the webpage here, I did receive some calls from people that were concerned about the map, that it didn't reflect what it is that we had asked for to be reflected. And so, you know, I do think that you need more time and more consideration for more maps. And I think we all can come to a consensus regarding the maps. And, you know, to Mr. Tom Toler, you know, I understand your point. You represent African Americans in your district. But what I'm saying is, most of you all are business owners. If you own 33% of a business, but the majority shareholders told you you're only going to get 20% of the profit, that will kind of sting a little bit, right? And so you would want full representation, full profit sharing for 33%, and full voting power for 33%. I would think so. So that's what we're asking. That we are 33%. We are taxpayers. And so we want to share in the decision-making of the school board. And it's not us against them or anything like that. I see Mr. Westman over morning, so.
I like that.
Okay, all right. So that's what it's about. And I know you all have your own interest in your districts, and I think we can come to that meeting if we all say. Thank you.
So listen, it's a hard process to go through. It requires us to make some difficult decisions. Again, the tendency, and I see this in my practice all the time, anytime there's something really hard that you have to go through, the tendency is to just put it off and put it off and put it off until you just have to make a decision. I don't want us to fall into that trap. That is why I've tried to push this process along as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I've tried to announce deadlines way in advance. I've tried to get information out there way in advance. We've had multiple meetings on it. You know, can we delay it a little bit longer? Sure we can, but I do want us, hopefully we will all agree after tonight that we're going to pay close attention to getting this done. We're going to take advantage of the offer that Mr. Garrett has extended to us multiple times to have meetings with him, and we're going to try to get this nailed down as quickly as we can. Again, I do not think it would be fair to the general public for us to delay this all the way to May or June. The voters deserve to know well in advance what their voting district is going to be before qualifying for these seats opens. You know, so we should not be extending this thing into very far into April, and definitely not into May, even though the law allows us to do that. So, go ahead.
Question. Am I remembering correctly, or didn't we get started on this late because the census wasn't sent to us on time? That they were trying to wait for the numbers to come in on the census? Didn't we? So this is really not our fault.
September.
So if we need to extend it a month or two because of that, we shouldn't feel like we have to rush, because it was basically the census fault, not ours.
You're not wrong.
Okay, thank you.
The census, the state level census data that we are bitching on arrived 7 months late, essentially. But, so it compresses the time more than anything else, that we need to get this done kind of qualified, where you have had the luxury of almost a year to work on this if the data arrived on time.
I just want the general public to know we're not dragging our feet on this because we don't want them to know what district they're voting in. We're trying to make the right decision for the next 10 years, and it wasn't our fault that we had to get started late. So I don't want the general public thinking that that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, pretty much, you gotta get it done.
Right.
Okay.
Well, as you said, even if you go for June, that doesn't mean you're gonna get it back that day. That means you're, the deadline to give it. They may drag, 3 weeks out, and then you got 2 weeks before election, if you wait that long. I mean, we really need to finish this and submit it so that we would have at least a month or 6 weeks, at least. If we wait to June, we're not gonna get it back until probably.
Well, I'm not
We don't
saying that we
want
need to
June.
wait till June.
Yeah.
Nobody
But
wants
at
to
least
wait.
give it to April,
Yeah.
April to be able to
to
make this
April,
decision.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean,
June's
like
too late.
today was a discussion, and then Tuesday, can we have more discussion? I mean, it's not like Mr. Garrett doesn't have another job or other customers per se, that he's gonna come over here at the drop of a hat. We have to set appointments with him as a businessman, just like any other business.
Well, it's time for us to contact them with maps if we want to do maps.
And that's
Yeah,
what,
well,
that's,
but he's been asking for
that's
maps.
all I'm saying is, yes,
We've
the,
been doing it.
this map-
Excellent job.
yes, this map was emailed to the board members 2 weeks ago with a request and invite to contact Mr. Garrett if you have questions or concerns, or if you have other maps that you want considered. All I'm asking of you board members is that if you have those questions or concerns, please reach out to Mr. Garrett, discuss those things with him, discuss those things with me as the chairman of this committee, and we can try to come work through a process to get those things resolved. But what I don't want to do is just continue to drag this out, and we haven't even had those conversations, okay?
Okay. So, is it possible to consider, what Mr. Showers and what they're asking for that third seat? Do we have a plan? Have we looked at that?
We have received the maps that the NAACP sent us.
No.
Those,
He's saying that they're not wanting to submit a map.
I understand, but,
They want, Mr. Garrett to come up with the map,
right.
with the,
So they have submitted maps, I just want to be clear, but those maps did include more split precincts per district than the law allows. We then set up a meeting with the LDF and Mr. Moore and others to see if they could assist us in finding a map that met their criteria that could be proposed for the board to consider. That meeting did not bear fruit so far. It is my understanding, though, that there have been additional discussions that Mr. Moore has played a key role in leading, and those discussions are continuing to try and find a map that can be presented to us. So far, we haven't found that map. But again, when I had the, and maybe we can find it, but when we said about a month ago that we were scheduling this meeting, and please, if you have those maps to present, that was why I said a month ago that this was going to be the deadline to do it, along with letting everybody know a month ago that we planned to have a final vote next Tuesday. Again, we can move the goalpost again, but we're running out of room to continue to move the goalpost.
okay.
So if we're going to be presenting additional maps, they need to be presented.
Okay, well, I'm hearing two different things here. Because as Robin stated, that, okay, we would like several different maps to choose from Mr. Garrett. And Mr. Showers is saying is that they're not gonna create a map for us. They just would like to see the third seat in a map position. So if we're sitting back and saying that, okay, we need to submit maps to Mr. Garrett, that's not what they're saying. They're saying that they want to see from us
Correct.
another option.
And that is what Mr. Garrett has said in the very first meeting that he's had with us and every meeting subsequent to that it is incumbent upon board members to work with him to create maps that then we as a board can vote on. We together have worked on creating this map. Mr. Moore has also been working with Mr. Garrett and to try to come up with another map. If any other board member wants to work with Mr. Garrett to create maps, we all have that opportunity to do it. But at some point, we're going to run out of time to get with Mr. Garrett and get maps created.
Okay. Well, Mr. Moore, how is it going, what were you asking him to do?
Pretty much, what I needed to see was were the numbers, right, for the districts. And I can't ask a question if you don't have enough criteria to even ask an intelligent question. So, the information that I got from him was, I guess there was some miscommunications. I never got all of the information that I needed. But it's going to require understanding and a knowledge of exactly what it is that's required to reform these districts. Some of my districts were already split, and I think the NAACP was looking at, they were taking what we had already, and that is why they had 5 split districts. I mean, five split precincts, because they didn't do anything to alter the precincts that were already split. Those precincts were majority minorities that got split. They didn't need to be split. But, you know, in order to not alter what was already established, they tried to show a pathway where we could actually do 3 precincts. And I believe that it can be done.
Mr. Duncan? The hours that I sat, in fact, it was in one of the offices at your office in Hammond. I asked him to pull different precincts from the area that we could actually add more numbers into Mr. Westmoreland's district. And that's how we ended up getting to the 42, almost 43%, 43 to 49%, because we pulled a lot of people, the pockets. You just can't, you can't jump around communities to get the numbers. It has to be in the same line where the precinct already is. And pockets of minorities are only in certain areas, as we all know, because that's where people live. So he pulled this precinct and put it in, and it didn't work. Put that one out, put another one in. For 3 hours, twice I sat with him and worked with him to try to do that. And this was the closest that we could come up to without distorting the districts altogether.
And I will say I have not had any problem getting data from
No.
Mr. Garrett and his team. In fact, if you sit down with him, as far as getting census data, he can literally draw a line wherever you want him to draw it and tell you exactly how many people live within that drawn line, what their ethnic, what's their race, all kinds of data. And he can draw that anywhere. And it just happens instantly and pops up into a little box. So there's no problem getting the data to do this. We just have to, individually as members, meet with them to do it and look at what your options are that you want to do. But all of that data is available to us. We just simply have to request it and go through the process.
So, Mr. Duncan, at this point, can we, he wants to have basically an open concept meeting, roundtable discussion, whatever, where Mr. Garrett can come and pull it up on the screen like he did in the individual meetings, but with all of us together. So, the only way we can technically set a meeting is to discuss his office or his secretary or whoever does his scheduling in order to get something on the books that he can come over here and do that with us.
So I am open to scheduling a workshop type meeting where we all do that. However, I would ask that if individual board members have questions specific to their district that they would like to have a clearer understanding with Mr. Garrett about, that you first schedule those discussions so that we can get those individual questions out of the way before we all get together as a group. Is that something that y'all would accept?
And it needs to. And the virtual option is, if Danny couldn't be here in person, he could be on that screen right there with that map, moving things around and answering questions virtually if he couldn't get here.
He can do that. I've done that with him, actually.
That's what he did with me, and it's, the visual that we need is not, the visual's on that map.
Right.
Move this precinct, what does it do? Move that precinct, what does it do?
And all I'm suggesting is that before we all get in the same room and go through that process, if you have questions specific to your district where you would like to see Danny do that, there's no reason for us all to be part of that process.
Call him and do it.
Call him and do it, and then when we all come back together to do that big workshop meeting, those things are out of the way, and then we can just kind of boil down to specifically those other things that we all need to be a part of as a group. Is that an acceptable plan?
So we can put the date off?
Well, that's up to the board president and the board, I guess, as far as continuing the process.
I mean, if we're gonna continue that, we definitely can't have a vote on it next Tuesday.
I
So.
can't hear.
I said, if we're gonna have a discussion like that, there's no way we're gonna have a final vote on Tuesday, so.
Okay.
I mean, we can shoot for April the 12th, because I think we're gonna move the board meeting that's on the 19th as a spring break week.
April
We're gonna probably move that to the 12th, so that gives us another 5 weeks to maybe try to get some maps finalized, and then we can make a final decision.
So, yeah, so here's what I would, Mr. Moore, this goes back to the rule that you wanted us to consider. It would be a rule that, that we set a deadline of 1 week for individual board members to reach Mr. Garrett and have individual discussions, and then that we table consideration of item B until sometime, I guess, 2 weeks from now.
Are we definitely gonna have another, committee meeting on April the 5th. I don't know if we wanna wait that long, but,
I'm not going to be available April the 5th, so it would have to be before that.
okay. We'll schedule something then.
So we
So I-
would schedule another committee meeting at the end of March.
Two motions on the floor.
Well, I'm just trying to, we're just discussing
Okay.
that. But if we were to do if we were to make a motion along those lines, Mr. Moore, does that accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? So we would allow 1 week for individual board members to have conversations with Mr. Garrett, and then we would table over to March, to a meeting on March the
29th?
29th.
You wanna plan that date without first knowing whether Danny can accommodate us all?
Well, the week of March the 29th, how about that?
That would be the final vote night?
That would be for another committee meeting where we would have that group discussion that y'all were talking about.
So the vote wouldn't be till April?
Right, then the final adoption would not be until April.
That's good.
April 5th?
No, it would be April the 12th.
12th.
So group discussion, whatever Mr. Garrett's office can
The-
accommodate the week of the 28th.
Right, the week of the 28th, we would try to schedule like a workshop committee meeting, right? But individual conversations would need to happen within 7 days of today. The workshop meeting would be the week of the 28th, and then final adoption would be scheduled for April the 12th.
Why does it have to be in a week? Why can't we do all of, like, the rest next week and the following week if we're not doing anything till the 28th?
Garrett, I don't know if we can do it.
Well,
We have 2
to have
weeks.
your initial conversation so that he can create whatever maps y'all want us to look at on March the 28th. So, I mean, he needs to have a conversation with y'all within the next 7 days so that he can then do the work of creating maps and deal with his other clients. That gives him a week to do all of that, and then we would have stuff that we can actually look at the following week.
So if we have a map we want to give Danny, it's got to be the week of March 28th. We get it together.
No, you need to have,
14th through the 18th.
Gotcha.
you need to talk to him about it before the 18th. That would give him a week to actually play around with maps, create them, generate them, circulate them.
Well, I'm like Robin. I think we need choices. So I'm submitting a 10-member school board map with 3 minority districts that week to Mr. Garrett. I'm letting him look at it. And if we vote it down, we vote it down. If we pick 9, we pick 9. But it's been working for our Tangipahoa Parish government forever. I've seen their map, by the way. It's a 10-member district like it is now, and it is 3 minority districts. Mr. Showers, would that be something you guys would consider if we went with the Tangipahoa Parish government plan?
Yes, we'll do that.
And I'm not saying I'm for it or not, but I've been looking at it and hearing what everybody said tonight, it might be a solution for us.
I don't know why we have never followed the same parish government map anyway. Why are we different than what
I'll
parish
try to
government
get that
is?
to all of us
Well,
tomorrow as soon as possible.
We've talked about that in previous meetings and pointed out the fact that the constituencies for parish government are significantly different than the constituencies for school board. And that's the reason why we haven't just adopted their maps. But again, yes, we're extending this out. Y'all have those conversations, get your maps, and let's get them together so we can look at it. All right, so the motion is to adopt, let's see,
I have 2 motions.
Well, item B is going to be tabled, I think.
What you gonna do?
That was the
with
all
motion
right.
that,
So let's go ahead and do that first. The first motion is to table,
To pull this item from the March 15th board agenda.
the motion is to table agenda item B to the next policy committee meeting.
Second.
Well, you're gonna make, Ms. Bailey
Still make
Simmons is
the
making the
I'll
motion.
make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Richards. We'll call the question.
Just 1 second.
10. It's going to take 2 to replace me. Did I say that in the mic?
Everybody heard it.
That was pretty funny.
You done.
The motion is made by Mrs. Bailey Simmons, seconded by Mrs. Richards to table consideration of the proposed maps to the next policy committee meeting.
Okay. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, and here's how we're going to handle the timeline. Mr. Blair, could you come back up to the mic? Mr. Blair, the board has adopted a rule that prior to the board considering any proposed plans, it has to come through your office, and it has to be circulated 2 days prior to that meeting where that proposed plan would be considered. We're considering, or we plan to call our next committee meeting the week of March the 28th. If board members have proposed plans that they would like to work through your office so that they can be circulated 2 days prior to that meeting of that week, when do they need to be talking to your office about those proposals?
Sooner rather than later, obviously. We have a lot of clients, and they're all in the same sort of boat y'all are. So the sooner we can get together and talk about the plan, an idea you have, concept you have, the better. And then just confecting the plan, making sure it meets all the requirements, and then based upon your release of confidentiality of your plan, releasing it to the rest of the membership so they can have a look at it.
So would you like to give a firm deadline, or you just want to keep it with that language?
Let me ask a question, Brett. Why is there a confidentiality factor? I don't care if I talk with Danny about what I'd like to do, I don't care if the other members are sitting in the same room.
You can tell them that.
Yeah, you know, and he already knows that. I mean, I had both Janice and Robin sitting right there when I was discussing it with them. So I don't understand the confidentiality rule. If it conflicts with Tom, then, when I want conflicts with Tom, then I think that he should let him know right away. I'm not concerned about a confidentiality.
I'm agnostic to that. We're hired by you to draw your plan, to help you draw your plan.
Okay.
And sometimes members, maybe not in Tangible Hope, and maybe elsewhere, think of something as a working plan. They're not ready to reveal it until they work through all the kinks in it, right? So the minute you and I talk, maybe you don't want that released if we haven't decided exactly how we want it to look. So that's the confidentiality requirement we offer to you until you have something you're ready to press the button to send to your other members. Right? That's can be a policy of the board. It's not our policy necessarily.
So do you have any firm deadline that you want to put out there as far as getting those?
So the final vote, April 12th, meeting March, do you have a date? March 28th?
It's going to be that week, whatever y'all tell us you're available to do it.
I would say at least 10 days prior to that.
Okay.
All right, like the 18th.
So the
18th, give us your final suggestions on plans so we have enough time to confect them and make sure they work.
So between now and the 18th, give us your,
Yes, ma'am.
Which will be next Friday.
All right. Okay. Any other discussion or comments from any other board members?
Are y'all going to be readily available to us anytime, the 14th through the 18th? Are we going to be able to Zoom with you, or are we going to be able to, because I mean, some of us are going to have schedules that are going to conflict.
Well, there will be conflicts. We can both. I will step in and help Dan in this process if necessary. We kind of divvied up police, jury, and school boards, and he took school boards, but I'm happy to help. I'm available by Zoom, so is Dan. In my real job, I work for the state legislature, I'm a demographer for the legislature. That's why I look like I slept in 3 months. Anyway, we're back in session starting Monday. But I should be available. You guys are not that far away from Baton Rouge, so I'm pretty sure we can make everybody's.
you have your cards with you? We could have them.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Can we have them?
So we'll make it work.
All right. With that, thank you for being here. This meeting is adjourned.